Chapter 15. Infinity. By the second ring we dashed to the door. Cat pushed past me, elbowing me in the stomach. By the third ring we were on the landing. We heard Dad answering on the extension in his and Mum's bedroom. We didn't dare go in, but we listened. But Dad's voice is soft and I could hear nothing. Then Aunt Gloria staggered out of Cat's room in a silky pale blue nightdress. Her eyes were wide open and her hair was messy. "Salim," she whispered. Her teeth chattered as if she was cold, although the temperature that night was not due to drop below 15 degrees. She flung open Mum and Dad's bedroom door just as Dad hung up. "Salim?" she repeated. "No," Dad said, "it wasn't Salim. It was the police." "They found him? Please say they found him." "They're not sure." Cat was holding my arm and squeezing it hard. Her mouth was round like an O, a very big O. She was staring at Dad's face, and something she saw there had made her startled. So I looked at Dad too. I could see strange movements going across his lips and eyebrows. There were small globules of sweat on his forehead. It was not an expression I'd ever seen on him before. "What do you mean they're not sure? They've either found him or they haven't," Aunt Gloria said. Her voice had a strange wobble in it that made a pumping start in my ears. It's like this," Dad said. "They found someone, not far from the London Eye, near the river. A young Asian boy." That's it, I thought, remembering theory number 4. They found somebody who's lost his memory and doesn't know who he is anymore. He's been wandering around all day without knowing where to go. "That must be him," Aunt Gloria said. "Why didn't they bring him right here?" "They couldn't," Dad was saying, "because, you see, this boy, whoever he is, he could be anyone at all, this boy is—" I was waiting for him to say he'd lost his memory, or maybe that the blow to his head had landed him in hospital, so it was not yet safe to move him. I didn't expect what came next. "He's in the morgue." I won't say much about what happened next. Aunt Gloria was sick on the carpet. Mum leapt out of bed. She sobbed and hugged Aunt Gloria, saying it couldn't possibly be Salim, while Dad started throwing outdoor clothes on over his pyjamas, and Cat stood there, gripping me. I turned to the door and started thumping it. Dad put a hand on my arm, and the next thing I knew, the police had arrived and taken Dad away to look at this young Asian boy in the morgue who might, or might not, be Salim. Aunt Gloria was too ill to go. She lay on the sofa covered over in her blanket, saying, "Salim, Salim, don't let it be you on that cold slab. Salim, Salim." Her teeth chattered, and Mum sat on the arm of the sofa, stroking her hair. Then Cat did something brave. She made a pot of tea, even though her hands were shaking. That's Cat. Horrible about small problems like missing a bus or being 10p short for the CD she wants, but good about the big problems, like when Mum had a big operation the year before. She made us frozen dinners and asked Dad how his day at work had been while we ate them. Then, when Mum got home, she ran up and downstairs with cups of tea, flowers and magazines, and Mum said she didn't know how she'd have coped without her. The others had tea in the living room waiting for Dad's return, and Mum had to bring the mug up to Aunt Gloria's lips to get her to drink as if she was a baby. I brought my tea back upstairs to my room. On the desk I found the list of theories and the souvenir photo that Cat had bought at the wheel. I stared at them without seeing them. Dover White Portland, I thought, northwest 6 to gale 8, becoming cyclonic. 54 minutes went by between when Dad went out of the door with the police and when he came back. That's 3,240 seconds. I read somewhere that as you get older, your brain speeds up. You think time goes by faster, so perhaps I felt the 3,240 seconds the longest. But Cat said later she was sure Aunt Gloria must have found them longer than me. She said the more agony you feel, the more time slows down. And Aunt Gloria must have been in more agony than anyone else, because it was her son that might, or might not, be lying on that cold slab. A young Asian boy. Salim or not Salim. Something terrible happened during those 54 minutes. No amount of making up shipping forecasts could stop me from thinking about it. Death. I realised it was real. I would die one day. Cat would die. Mum would die. Dad would die. Aunt Gloria would die. Mr. Shepherd at school would die. Every living thing on this planet would die. It was not a question of if, but when. Of course I'd known about death before, but during those 54 minutes I really knew it. That's when I realised that there are two kinds of knowledge, shallow and deep. You can know something in theory but not know it in practice. You can know part of something but not all of it. Knowledge can be like the skin on the surface of the water in a pond, or it can go all the way down to the mud. It can be the tiny tip of the iceberg or the whole 100%. I thought of the long chain of all the days of my life and wondered how far along that chain I'd already got. Was I still just starting, halfway along, or nearing the end? If it was Salim on the cold slab, did he know when he got up this morning that he'd reached the last link on the chain? I thought about God and immortal souls and eternity. I remembered how years ago, when Father Russell in our church taught me that God had made me, I asked him, "If God made me, who made God?" Father Russell had smiled and said I was a born theologian, but didn't answer my question. "Did another God make him?" I'd said, and in my mind's eye I saw a chain of gods, each having made the last, going back into infinity. Father Russell had sat down beside me and said, "There is only one God, Ted, one God who has always been there. He is outside of time. He is beyond our understanding. He is always with us." I wondered now about this God who was beyond our understanding. I closed my eyes. I tried to imagine him, but no matter how hard I thought, all I could see were clouds of confusion in a vast and silent universe, and if I'd still had my trampoline, I would have jumped extra hard and extra high. Dad came through the front door 3,240 seconds later. I went downstairs a different Ted from the Ted that had gone up. I had stared death in the face. When I saw Dad, I knew that he too had stared death in the face. His eyes were looking far away into the same vast void. Mum, Aunt Gloria and Kat threw themselves at him. "No," he kept saying, drawing the three of them into an embrace. "Don't worry, it wasn't Salim. It was somebody else, some other boy." Then he looked over their heads at me and I looked back at him, and I knew we were both thinking the same thing. The someone else, the boy who wasn't Salim, the young Asian who was lying on the slab. If not Salim, who? There were shrieks, tears, laughs. There were countless "Thank God I knew it wasn't him, I told yous." I didn't say anything. Dad stood still among the confusion, shaking his head. Then he said in a quiet way, "It was a boy, some young boy of the street, maybe a bit older than Salim, but smaller, brown and skinny, a bit of a moustache, just like Salim had when he arrived. Before he shaved it off," Kat said. "And the same black jeans, a kind of lost innocence in his face, a boy who'd never had much in the first place, I'd say. There was dirt in his fingernails and bruises on his arm." Dad shook himself as if he was waking up from a nightmare. "How did he die, Dad?" Kat said. He didn't answer. "I need a drink, Faith," he said, "a scotch." Kat took me by the arm. "Ted, let's go," she whispered. I heard Aunt Gloria crying again, quietly this time. Kat went upstairs and I followed her. Without saying anything, Kat curled up on the lilo and I got into bed. The boy on the slab, a boy of the streets. I turned off the light and listened to Kat's breathing, which showed that she was alive. Dirt in his fingernails, Salim or not Salim. The words went round in my head like a scary nursery rhyme, echoing into infinity. It was a long time before I went to sleep. Chapter 16. Cloud Cover. The next day I woke up early. I looked out of the window to find thick cloud covering London. Humidity had increased overnight. If I'd been the weatherman that morning, I would have said an area of low pressure was moving in from the west, with closely packed isobars and a chance of thunder. Kat was already up. She was sitting at my desk, arranging the list of theories on one side, the souvenir photo she'd bought at the Eye, and Salim's camera on the other side. "These are theories," she said, "and these are clues. I've thought it out during the night, Ted. I have a plan." I know about Kat's plans. They always involve doing things Mum and Dad have told us not to. I shuffled up to her side. "A plan? I said. 3 plans. First, we develop this film. The photographs may reveal another clue, you never know. I nodded. This seemed good. Then we test theory number 8. I wasn't sure what this involved, but said nothing. And then we take another ride on the Eye. I thought about this. Revisiting the place where Salim had disappeared was a good idea. In detective stories, when the sleuth revisits the scene of the crime, he nearly always finds a clue that has been overlooked by the ordinary police. But there was a problem. Mum will never allow it, I said. If she says no, we'll sneak out. That would be wrong, Kat. Besides, we haven't got the money for the tickets. Kat reached for her leopard skin backpack. She took out some large notes and 3 £1 coins. Mum and Auntie Glo gave me this money yesterday, remember? For the 5 tickets. The souvenir photo was £7. This is what's left. Shouldn't you give it back to Mum, Kat? Stealing is bad. It says so in the Bible. Shut up, Ted. She hasn't asked for it. She's forgotten. I went. Kat shrugged. Mum thinks it's my fault Salim went missing. Fine, I'll give her her money back in my own time. It's a loan, not stealing. She turned to the window, threw it open and leaned outside. She put Salim's camera to her eye and clicked 18 times. She took 18 photographs of our back garden with the washing on the line and beyond that the shed. I did not think these would make very interesting shots. When she finished clicking, the film rewound itself. She examined the camera carefully. Found it, she said. She pressed a button on the side and the back of the camera jumped open. She shook out the roll of film. That's plan A, she said. Now plan B. She put on her long dressing gown over her nightdress and stood there with the back of the gown draped over her arm. Come on, she said. I stared. Don't you want to test your theory? She said. She picked up the sheet with 8 theories and read the last one out loud, about Salim hiding in somebody else's clothes. Now it came down to it, I didn't much like the idea of getting in under Kat's dressing gown. I said. She took me by the elbow and dragged me downstairs. In the hallway she made me crouch down behind her and humped the back of the dressing gown over my shoulders. She made me put my hands around her waist and practice walking up and down. Then we walked into the kitchen. It reminded me of the time Dad had played the back half of a donkey in the school pantomime. I could hear, but not see, that Mum was washing up glasses from the night before. She must have looked round. "Hello, Kat," she said. Her voice had a sighing sound in it. "What on earth's Ted doing up the back of your dressing gown?" I got out and stood up, blinking. "Told you," said Kat. "Is this some kind of joke?" Mum said. "We were checking a theory of mine, Mum," I said, "about how Salim might have left the pod without us noticing. It is only one of 8... Mum looked at me and she looked at Kat. A grimy glass was in her hand. It dropped back into the suds. She took off her rubber gloves. "Kat," she said, "can you finish this?" Her words were ordinary, but her face was a Siberian permafrost. Kat took over the washing up without saying a word. Mum went through to the living room and sat there very still. "Ted," she called, "I want to talk to you." I was in trouble. I didn't know why. I said, going through and standing before her. "Ted," she said, her left hand stroked her forehead. "You and your theories. Salim's gone missing, Ted. It's not a game." "Not a game," I repeated. "I don't think you realise how serious it is." "Serious," I agreed. Don't keep repeating what I say. Don't grunt. I've told you about that before. Remember? Sorry. And remember to look at me properly when I'm talking to you. I concentrated on making my eyes move so that instead of looking at Mum's shoulder, I was looking at her face. Her eyes were small and her skin was white and her lips were turned down. "Ted," she leaned over and touched my hand. "Just think for a minute. What if Auntie Glo had seen you? How would she have felt?" My hand started to shake. "But, Mum, we've got these theories, 8 of them, and Ted..." "No." My head went off to one side. I checked out the swirls on the carpet. My hand flapped harder. Mum's usually the one to understand me in this house. She's stuck up for me countless times. When I try to explain my theories about weather systems or other remarkable phenomena of the universe, and Kat tells me to shut up, it's Mum who tells Kat not to be rude. But since Salim disappeared, It had been the other way round. Cat was listening. Mum wasn't. I could hear Cat in the kitchen. Plates and pans clattered. I did something I've never done before. I didn't answer Mum. I didn't even go hum. I went back into the kitchen. I picked up a glass from the draining board and smashed it to the floor. Cat looked at me, eyes wide. God, what next? Mum wailed, coming through the kitchen after me. Our best crystal? Sorry, Mum, Cat said. It's my fault, not Ted's. It slipped. But Mum had seen it happen. We all looked at the glass on the floor and I hummed and my hand flapped and I didn't stop it and Mum didn't tell me to stop it. She looked on in silence while Cat got out the dustpan and brush and swept up the mess. Then she sat on a chair at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, and I knew I'd made her sad and I wanted to go back to my room. Then Dad came in. He was wearing jeans and an old shirt, which meant he thought it was the weekend and he didn't have to go to work, although he did because it was Tuesday. He went up to the sink, shuffled Cat to one side, took the mug she had just washed up, turned the cold tap on, filled it and gulped it down. He finished the water, filled the mug a second time and gulped it down again. Cat nudged me and nodded her head. There were 2 wine bottles and a half-empty brandy bottle and a third empty whiskey bottle on the fridge. I remembered reading that alcohol, even though it is liquid, makes you thirsty. If you're marooned in a calm sea with barrels of wine and no water, there are 2 things you shouldn't do. Drink the wine or drink the sea. Actually, there's a third thing you shouldn't drink. Maybe you can guess what. So, Mum said, someone's not going to work today. I looked around the room wondering what she meant. Dad knocked back another glass. Someone's already rung in sick. Feel rotten. Faye, really do. Where's Gloria? Still asleep. Thank the Lord for small mercies. Dad, Cat began. Mum. She let out the suds, took the mug from Dad, rinsed it and upended it on the draining board. Ted and I, she said, we were wondering, we'd like to go out today. Mum's lips pursed and her eyes rolled. After what happened yesterday? Not to mention Ted breaking that glass just now. It's out of the question. You're grounded, both of you. But no buts. Dad cleared his throat. He took Mum by the arm and led her into the living room. He closed the door behind him. I could hear them arguing in undertones. Cat leaned over and whispered, Dad's on our side, I know it. He'll get Mum to let us go out. You wait and see. Cat was right. 45 minutes later, she and I were walking out of the house along with Dad. Mum said goodbye in the hallway. Her arms darted out as I passed her and she gave me a hug. The hug was very short because she knows I do not like hugs of any kind. I saw her face up close and it was red and blotchy, which meant she had been crying and was unhappy still. Have a good day, all of you, she said. Dad took his mobile phone in case of news. As we walked towards the tube station, Dad asked, Where do you 2 want to go? The Science Museum, I said. Cat kicked my shin, a very rude thing to do. Actually, I want to go to the shopping centre first, Dad, she said. Not more CDs, Cat. Oh, no, I just have to nip into the chemist's. She held out her hand and wiggled her fingers, which were painted silver, for some nail polish remover. Can't wait to see the back of that stuff, Dad said. Makes you look like an alien in a B-movie. While Cat was in the chemist's, Dad and I waited outside and he told me what a B-movie was, and how films like Creature from the Black Lagoon or Catwomen of the Moon, which Dad has in his collection, were made on low budgets with poor quality props and actors, and were so bad that they were funny and had a cult following. I asked Dad what a cult following was. Dad said a cult following was a fan club of something that wasn't mainstream, which means something that only a certain number of people like. I was asking Dad how many fans it took to make something move from being side stream to mainstream when Cat reappeared, brandishing a plastic bottle of blue liquid. Got your paint stripper? Dad said to her. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Where next? Ted had an idea, didn't you? Yes, Cat, the Science Museum. Not that one, the idea before that one. Her little finger went round in a circle. She winked. Cat's behaviour, from snapping 18 pictures of the garden shed to making me get under her dressing gown to darting off to buy nail polish remover, was making my brain spin. Remember, Ted? Yes, the London Eye. Dad stopped walking. He folded his arms and looked at me, then at Kat. So what's this about, then? He said. You two on a trail, huh? Kat did a hands-raised shoulder shrug. Then she grabbed Dad's arm. Dad, it won't do any harm. You never know. If we go back at the same time as we were there yesterday, he might even show up. He might not know his way back to our house, but anybody could find the eye again, wherever they've got to. We just wanted to have another look, get in a pod, see what it's like, see things as Salim must have seen them. It was another one of those sentences that everybody finishes in their heads, not out loud. Kat's lips trembled. I once heard Mum say that Kat and Dad had wrapped her around her little finger. I'd no idea what Mum was talking about. I'd looked at Kat's little finger and imagined Dad going around it in miniature, stretched and pummelled into an odd-looking living ring. Dad drew Kat towards him and gave her a squeeze. It's really hard, kitten, I know, he said. Kitten is what Dad called Kat when she was small. He looked up at the sky. The eye it is. There's a lot of cloud, which is good and bad. Why bad? Said Kat. We won't see that far. Why good? I said. Because it won't be too crowded, Ted, which means we won't have long to queue. Let's go. Chapter 17. Lightning Strikes. When we got there, it turned out as Dad said. The crowds around the London Eye were thinner than yesterday. A large tract of cumulonimbus cloud had rolled in. The area of low pressure was approaching. It was 990 millibars and falling, I estimated. Visibility was only fair. Getting tickets didn't take long. Soon we were in the line for the ramp up to the Eye. We got to the point where we'd parted with Salim yesterday. A security man checked us over with a handheld machine, like a giant bubble-blowing holder. Then we walked up the ramp. It was a zigzag, a back-to-front Z. We boarded the moving pod along with a group of 8 foreign teenagers and a tired-looking mum with a folded-up buggy, her baby and her 2 older boys. We began to rise. I counted how many we were as we moved anti-clockwise from 6 to 5 o'clock. 14. I decided not to count the baby, as it was unable to walk around or look at the view, and because it was too small to remember the experience. Yesterday in Salim's pod I'd counted 21. I drifted over to the side of the pool where nobody else was standing. I watched the other passengers. They looked out, turned, chattered in quiet voices and clicked cameras. Kat came over and stood beside me. I did it, she whispered. Did what? I said. Shush, I dropped the film in at the chemist's. By the time we get back it will be developed. I thought of the 18 shots of the back garden and the 18 other shots, our last link to Salim. That is good, Kat. Dad joined us. What a view, he said. Look at how tiny the cars are. They're like abacus beads, Kat said, going left and right. I looked down, but I couldn't say I'd ever seen abacus beads like that. Dad pointed south. If you had binoculars, you could make out our street, maybe even our house. Typical, Kat said. You come up here just to see what stares you in the face every day. Dad laughed. I've never seen where we live from this vantage before. There's the barracks, looking almost handsome, if you imagine it cleaned up, maybe. And there's Guy's Tower, and there's the shopping centre. You can see its red roof. Come and see the Houses of Parliament, Dad. Kat pulled him over to the other side of the pod. I took Dad's place at the south-east side and looked out, and without taking in what I was seeing. We got to 12 o'clock. Visibility decreased further. The Thames estuary dissolved into cloud. I thought of the Marie Celeste, a ghost ship with no crew, sailing over the horizon. I thought of the last dodo dying on a remote rock. I thought of Lord Lucan standing on a cliff deciding whether or not to throw himself off. I thought of a chain of gods, each having been created by the next, vanishing into infinity, the great vast void. I thought of the boy on the slab, the young boy with bruises and dirty fingernails, the boy who wasn't Salim. Where are you, Salim? I wondered. Then suddenly it was as if I became Salim. I felt his laughing presence inside me, almost like a ghost, while I stood looking out. I tried to imagine what he'd have done, alone among strangers in his pod. Would he have chatted to somebody? Would he have stayed quietly in a corner? I divided into two, with the Ted half asking the Salim half what had happened, but the ghost of Salim, like the Dodos, Lords and crew of the Marie Celeste, vanished before we reached 9 o'clock. An announcement came on from a speaker in the corner of the pod, suggesting that we all group together facing north-eastwards, towards the spiral staircase to pose for the souvenir photo. "Shall we?" said Dad. "Yes, let's," said Kat. Kat and Dad gathered on one side of the pod with the other passengers, while I stayed out at the edge, half posing, half looking at the others posing. The camera flashed. The pod came down. A young man with a London Eye T-shirt, a member of staff, stood at the door beckoning us to come out. The others filed out first. Dad and I were next, but Kat hung back, her eyes darting around. She crouched down by the seats, but the man came in and shooed her out, then picked up a piece of litter that the woman holding the baby had dropped and got out himself. "What was all that about?" Dad said. I nearly said theory number 1 being disproved, but remembered how Mum had reacted to theory number 8. "I thought I'd dropped something," Kat said. "Well, shake a leg," Dad said. Shake a leg is Dad's favourite way of saying hurry up, although if you tried to run and shake a leg at the same time, you would fall over. Kat nudged me. We'd both realised the same thing at the same time. You couldn't stay on for another go. Exit, enter, exit, enter. It was a smooth operation. The way out led past the souvenir photo booth close to where we'd said we'd meet Salim. There were several television-like screens with different shots of each passenger load. Our one was number 2903. There was Dad, there was Kat, there was the mum and her 2 boys and her baby. The teenage tourists were bunched around them, grinning and waving. You could only see my shoulder and ear sticking out on the right, behind everybody else. "Ted's cut off, and I look a fright," Dad said, "but you look all right, Kat." Kat had her arms folded and her hair was tied in what girls call a top knot. Her skinny, bony face jutted out. With her tilted chin and dark eyebrows, she seemed sharper somehow, as if she was more in focus than other people around her, or more real. You couldn't help noticing her, whether you were looking for her or not. Maybe that's what being pretty meant, I thought. "Gosh," she said, "my hair looks icky." Dad bought the shot anyway. Then we left the eye and walked along the river. The Thames was flat and brown. The pleasure boats cruised along with hardly any passengers. You could hear aircraft, but not see them. The blanket of cloud grew thicker. I kept looking out for Salim. Whenever we passed a boy of about his build with dark hair, I'd stare, but when we drew close, it was never him. Dad stopped to look out across the water. He pointed out 2 cormorants that dipped and dived into the water, disappearing for ages, then reappearing 10 metres or more from where they'd gone down. "Is Salim like the cormorants, Dad?" "Sorry, Ted?" "Will he reappear eventually like they do? Maybe not where he disappeared, but somewhere else?" Dad didn't answer straight away. He looked downstream with his lips turned down, which meant he was sad. Perhaps he was thinking of the boy on the slab, the boy who might have been Salim but wasn't. "I certainly hope Salim is like the cormorants, Ted." We crossed the river to the embankment gardens and had sandwiches in the park cafe. When we'd finished, we walked around the beds of colourful flowers. Then, just as I'd predicted that morning, a thunderstorm started. First rain dripped, then splattered. There was a thunderclap. The instability in the upper atmosphere erupted. I thought of theory number 5, spontaneous combustion. If thunder was possible, why not that? "Good thing we're not on the eye now," Dad said. Lightning flashed. 10 seconds later, it thundered again. "Dad," I said, "the storm is 3 kilometres away. Even if it was nearer, your chance of being struck is approximately 1 in 3 million. We dashed for the underground station. By now it was raining cats and dogs, which is the strangest expression of all, but my personal favourite. When I imagine cats and dogs coming from the sky, I see white fluffy kittens and Dalmatian puppies. Then it turned to hail. The lightning and thunder were 4 seconds apart. 1,200 metres, I said, and it is sheet lightning, which means... "Shut up, Ted," Kat said. She had her jacket collar up over her head. "I'm soaked." Dad looked at his watch. 3 o'clock. No calls on the mobile, so no news. "Let's go home," Kat said. "It's too wet to stay out." "OK, Kat, we'll call it a day." We went down into the underground. By the time we were back up on street level, the storm had moved away. The rain had stopped. The pavements ran with moisture. "It was a very localised storm system," I said. "Dad," said Kat, "do you mind if we stop by the shopping centre again? I want to get a present for Auntie Glow, some bath oil to help her relax." Dad's lips went right up. "That's a great idea, kitten." We waited as Kat went into the chemist's again. She emerged with a plastic bottle of syrupy, raspberry-coloured liquid. Dad unscrewed the lid, smelled it and crinkled up his nose. This meant that he didn't think it smelled pleasant, but what he said was, "That should do nicely." What he didn't see, but I did, was the top of a wallet of newly processed photos bulging from the pocket of Kat's fur-coloured jacket.